I never thought I would be telling this story. I never thought my life would take the turn it did at 63 years old. But here I am, sitting on the same porch where I have sat for 4 decades, watching the same street where my children learned to ride their bikes, and I need you to understand something before I begin. Everything I am about to tell you is true. Every single word. Every tear that fell from my eyes, every moment of betrayal, and every moment of unexpected grace that followed. This is not a story I wanted to live, but it is the story that taught me who I really am. My name is Margaret Ellen Dawson, and for 38 years I was a wife, a mother, and eventually a grandmother. I raised 2 children in a small house in Ohio, the kind of house with a front porch where I would sit every evening watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes until the streetlights came on. The house was nothing special to look at, just a 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters and a red front door that my husband Harold painted himself back in 1987. He chose red because I told him once, on our 3rd date, that I had always dreamed of having a house with a red front door. He remembered that. 30 years later, he still remembered. I baked cookies for school fundraisers, the chocolate chip ones with the recipe from my grandmother, the ones that always sold out within the first hour. I volunteered at the church, organizing the annual rummage sale and teaching Sunday school to the 5-year-olds. I held my husband Harold's hand through his chemotherapy treatments, sitting beside him in those cold plastic chairs at the oncology center, pretending to read magazines while secretly watching every drip of medicine enter his veins. And I was there when he took his last breath 4 years ago, holding that same hand, whispering into his ear that it was okay to let go, that I would be fine, that I would see him again someday. After Harold died, I thought the hardest part of my life was behind me. I had survived the worst thing imaginable, losing the love of my life, the man who had been my partner and my best friend for 4 decades. What else could possibly hurt me after that? I was wrong. I was so terribly, heartbreakingly wrong. Let me take you back to where this all started. It was a Tuesday morning in March. I remember because Tuesdays were the days I would call my son Daniel. We had established that routine years ago, after he moved to Chicago. Tuesdays at 10 in the morning, my time. 9 in the morning, his time. Just a quick check-in, nothing elaborate, but something we both looked forward to. At least, I thought we both looked forward to it. Daniel was 41 years old, married to a woman named Christine, and they had 2 children together, my precious grandchildren, Emma, who was 12, and little Oliver, who was 8. Daniel worked in finance, something with investments and portfolios and terms I never fully understood, no matter how many times he tried to explain them to me. But it paid well. Very well, apparently. They lived in a beautiful house in the suburbs of Chicago. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a pool in the backyard with a slide that the kids loved. The kind of life I always dreamed my children would have. The kind of life Harold and I worked so hard to give them the foundation to build. My daughter Rebecca lived in Seattle. She was 37, unmarried by choice, she always said, working as a nurse in a pediatric intensive care unit. We talked every Sunday, and she would tell me about the babies she helped save, the tiny fighters who came into the world too early or too sick but left healthy and whole because of the work she and her colleagues did. She would tell me about the parents she comforted, holding their hands during the darkest hours of the night, being a light in their darkness. Rebecca had her father's gentle heart. Harold always said she was the best of both of us. That Tuesday morning in March, I made my coffee the same way I always did. 2 scoops of ground coffee, enough water for 2 cups even though I only ever drank one. I poured it into my favorite mug, the one Emma had painted for me at a ceramics place 3 years ago, covered in uneven hearts and wobbly letters that spelled out, "Best Grandma." I added my cream and my sugar, exactly the way Harold used to make it for me, and I settled into his old recliner, the brown leather one that was worn and cracked in places, but that I could not bring myself to get rid of. It still smelled like him sometimes, on good days, on days when I needed to feel close to him. I picked up my phone and called Daniel at exactly 10 o'clock. He answered on the third ring. Daniel said casually, "Mom, hey, I was just about to call you." I smiled, settling deeper into the recliner. "Were you now? That's funny, because I've been waiting for you to call me back since last Thursday. I left you 2 messages. Daniel sighed, the kind of sigh I had heard 1,000 times from him over the years, the sigh of a busy person with too much on his plate. I know. Work has been crazy. You wouldn't believe the quarter we're having. The markets are volatile, clients are nervous, everyone wants answers I don't have." "I'm sure it's all very impressive," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "How are the kids? How's Christine? I haven't talked to her in weeks." "Everyone's good. Christine's been busy with her book club and her tennis lessons and whatever else she has going on. The kids are great. Emma made the honor roll again. Oliver's soccer team won their last game. Actually, Mom, that's what I wanted to talk to you about." "The soccer game?" No. Daniel paused, and something in the quality of his silence made me sit up straighter. "Christine and I have been talking. About you." "About me? What about me?" "We're worried, Mom. You've been alone in that house for 4 years now. You never go anywhere. You never do anything for yourself. You're just sitting there in that big empty house waiting for—" "I don't know what you're waiting for." I felt my defenses rise. "I go places. I went to the garden center just last week, and I have lunch with Dorothy from church every other Wednesday." Daniel's voice took on an edge of frustration. "Mom, the garden center doesn't count. And lunch with Dorothy isn't exactly living life to the fullest. I'm talking about really going somewhere, taking a trip, having an adventure, experiencing something new for once." I sat down harder in Harold's recliner, gripping the armrests. "Daniel, I'm 63 years old. I don't need adventures. I need my routine. I need my house. I need the life I've built. Your father and I spent 40 years building this life, and just because he's gone doesn't mean I have to abandon everything we created together." Daniel was insistent. "That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're stuck, Mom. You're frozen in time. Dad wouldn't have wanted you to just sit in that house waiting to die." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually gasped. "That's a terrible thing to say to your mother." "I'm sorry, but it's true. Look, Christine and I want to do something nice for you. A gift. Something that will get you out of your comfort zone and remind you that there's still life left to live. We bought you a cruise. 2 weeks in the Caribbean leaving from Miami. All expenses paid. You just have to show up." For a long moment, I could not speak. A cruise. I had never been on a cruise. Harold and I had always talked about taking one, back when we were young and full of dreams. We would see the advertisements in magazines, couples dancing on moonlit decks, eating elaborate dinners in fancy dining rooms, watching the sunset from the railing of a ship in the middle of the ocean. "Someday," we always said. "Someday when the kids are grown. Someday when we have more money. Someday when we retire." But there was never enough money, never enough time. And then Harold got sick, and the dream faded like so many others, pushed aside by the grim realities of treatments and hospital bills, and the slow, terrible process of watching the person you love slip away. "Daniel," I finally managed, "I can't accept that. It must have cost a fortune." "Don't worry about the cost," Daniel said, and something in his voice sounded almost too eager, too rehearsed. "I told you, work is going well, really well. Consider it a thank you. For everything you did for us growing up, for all the sacrifices you and Dad made, for taking care of Dad when he was sick. You deserve this, Mom. You deserve to have something beautiful." I felt tears prick my eyes. My son, thinking of me like this, planning something so generous, so thoughtful. Maybe I had raised him right after all. Maybe all those years of teaching him about family and gratitude and love had taken root in ways I could finally see. "When does it leave?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. 3 weeks from Saturday. I already talked to Rebecca. She thinks it's a great idea. She's actually going to fly in from Seattle to help you get ready. You talked to Rebecca about this? Of course. We both love you, Mom. We both want what's best for you. Rebecca's going to come in and help you pack. Make sure you have everything you need. Sunscreen and bathing suits and whatever else you need for a cruise. We've got it all figured out. All you have to do is say yes. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why Daniel was being so generous when he usually complained about money every time we talked. I should have noticed the strange urgency in his voice, the way he seemed to need me to agree right then and there. But I was touched. I was moved by what I thought was love. I was a mother being offered a gift by her child, and I wanted so badly to believe in the goodness of that gift. "Okay," I said. "Okay, I'll go." Daniel's voice brightened immediately, almost too quickly, like a switch had been flipped. "That's great, Mom. That's really great. You're going to have the time of your life, I promise. This is going to change everything." He had no idea how right he was. This would change everything, just not in the way either of us expected. The 3 weeks passed quickly. Rebecca flew in from Seattle on a Thursday afternoon, arriving at my door with 2 suitcases and a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. At the time, I attributed her strange energy to exhaustion from the flight. Looking back, I realize it was guilt. But I did not know that then. We spent 2 wonderful days together, or at least they felt wonderful to me. We went through my closet, pulling out summer dresses I had not worn in years, holding them up to my body and deciding which ones still fit, which ones were hopelessly out of style, which ones might work with the right accessories. Rebecca took me shopping, something we had not done together since she was a teenager, and we would spend Saturday afternoons at the mall, trying on clothes we could not afford and dreaming about lives we thought we wanted. We bought new sandals, comfortable ones with good arch support, because Rebecca insisted that cruises involved a lot of walking. We bought sunscreen with a high SPF because at my age, she said, I could not afford to take chances with my skin. We bought a floppy straw hat that made me look ridiculous, but that Rebecca insisted was cruise appropriate. She laughed when I put it on, and for a moment, she was my little girl again, the one who used to follow me around the house asking a million questions about everything and nothing. The night before I was supposed to leave, Rebecca helped me finish packing. We folded clothes and tucked them into my suitcase, the nice one Harold and I had bought for our 25th anniversary trip to San Francisco, the only real vacation we ever took together. Rebecca said quietly while arranging my toiletries, "You're going to love it, Mom. The ocean, the sunsets, the food." "They have these midnight buffets where you can eat lobster at 2 in the morning if you want." I laughed, zipping up my toiletry bag. Why would anyone want to eat lobster at 2 in the morning? Rebecca smiled, but it was a strange smile, sad somehow, almost wistful. "Because you can, Mom. That's the whole point." Because you can. I hugged her tight before she left for her hotel, holding her close the way I had when she was small, when I could still fix all her problems with a kiss and a cookie. "Thank you for helping me with this," I whispered into her hair. "I know it was a lot of trouble flying all the way out here." "I appreciate it more than you know." Rebecca pulled back and looked at me with something in her eyes I could not quite identify. Fear, maybe, or regret, or the particular kind of sorrow that comes from knowing something terrible that you cannot bring yourself to say, Rebecca said with intensity. "You deserve good things, Mom. Remember that, okay? No matter what happens, you deserve good things. You're a good person. The best person I know. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise. I did not understand what she meant. How could I? I thought she was just being sentimental, getting emotional about her mother going on a trip alone for the first time. I patted her cheek and told her I loved her and watched her walk to her car. If I had known what she was hiding, I would have dragged her back into the house and demanded the truth. But I did not know, and so I let her go. The morning of my departure, Daniel picked me up at 6 in the morning. It was still dark outside, the sky that deep blue-black of early spring mornings, the kind of darkness that makes everything feel possible and impossible at the same time. I had barely slept the night before, too excited and too nervous to quiet my mind. Daniel loaded my suitcase into the trunk of his rental car while I took one last look at my house. The porch light was on, casting a warm yellow glow over the front steps. The red door looked almost brown in the dim light. Through the living room window, I could see the corner of Harold's recliner, the lamp I always left on when I was away, so the house would not feel so empty when I returned. "Ready?" Daniel asked, holding the passenger door open for me. "I think so," I said. "As ready as I'll ever be." The drive to the airport was quieter than I expected. Daniel focused on the road, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched in a way that reminded me of Harold when he was worried about something he did not want to discuss. "You're quiet," I said after 20 minutes of silence broken only by the hum of the engine and the soft sound of the radio. Daniel glanced at me. "Just tired." Early morning. "You didn't have to come all the way out here to drive me. I could have taken a taxi." "No." Daniel's voice was sharp, almost too emphatic. Then he softened. "No, I wanted to. It's the least I could do." I watched the familiar streets of my neighborhood pass by the window, the corner store where I bought my morning paper and chatted with Mr. Kim about the weather, the park where I had pushed Daniel and Rebecca on the swings when they were small, catching them at the bottom of the slide, their laughter filling the air like music, the church where Harold and I had gotten married 44 years ago, where we had baptized both our children, where I had stood in a black dress and accepted condolences from people I barely recognized. "Mom?" Daniel's voice pulled me from my memories. "Yes?" I want you to know that I love you, and I'm grateful. For everything you did for us. For me. Growing up wasn't always easy, but you and Dad, you always made sure we had what we needed, more than what we needed." I reached over and patted his hand on the steering wheel. "That's what parents do, sweetheart. We sacrifice for our children. It's not something you need to thank us for." Daniel's throat moved as he swallowed hard. "Still, I want you to know." At the airport, Daniel walked me all the way to the security line. He carried my bag, held my arm as we navigated the crowded terminal, found a bench where I could sit while he checked the departure board. When it was time for me to go through security, he hugged me. Tight. Tighter than he had hugged me in years, maybe since Harold's funeral. "Are you crying?" I asked, surprised to see his eyes glistening. Daniel wiped at his face quickly. "Just going to miss you, that's all. 2 weeks is a long time." "I'll call every day," I promised. "We can do video chat. I'll show you the ship, the ocean, everything." Daniel shook his head firmly. "Don't worry about that. The ship has terrible reception. International calls are expensive. Just enjoy yourself. Take pictures. We'll talk when you get back." He hugged me again, even tighter this time, and then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd of travelers without looking back. I watched the spot where he had been for a long moment, something uneasy stirring in my chest that I could not name, but I pushed it away. This was my adventure, my chance to do something new, something exciting, something just for me. I was not going to let baseless worry ruin it. The flight to Miami was uneventful. I sat in a window seat next to a young woman who spent the entire 3-hour flight on her phone, typing furiously and occasionally sighing with great drama. I did not mind. I was too busy looking out the window, watching the clouds pass beneath us like cotton stretched across blue fabric, thinking about Harold and wondering if he could see me somehow, if he was watching from wherever he was, proud of me for taking this step. In Miami, a shuttle took me from the airport to the cruise port. The bus was full of other passengers, couples mostly, some families with children, a few groups of friends laughing and taking photos. Everyone seemed so excited, so full of anticipation. I tried to match their energy, to let their enthusiasm lift me up. And then I saw it. The ship. It rose from the water like something from another world, enormous beyond anything I had imagined. I had seen pictures, of course, in the brochures and on the websites that Rebecca had shown me, but pictures did not do it justice. It was a floating city, a vast structure of white and glass and gleaming metal, towering above the dock like a monument to human ambition. The name was painted on the side in elegant blue letters that caught the afternoon sun: the Celestial Voyager. I clutched my ticket and my passport to my chest as I joined the line of passengers waiting to board. The process was surprisingly smooth. A flurry of document checks and photo verifications and cheerful crew members in crisp white uniforms welcoming us aboard. A young man who could not have been older than 25 helped me find my cabin, carrying my bag through endless corridors that all looked the same, past doors and elevators and signs pointing to restaurants and theaters and pools. My cabin was on deck 7. It was small but beautiful, everything gleaming and new. A single bed with crisp white sheets and far too many pillows. A porthole window looking out at the water, which was currently obscured by the concrete of the dock, but which would soon show me nothing but ocean. A tiny bathroom with a shower that looked barely big enough to turn around in. A small desk with a chair. A television mounted on the wall. On the bed was a bottle of champagne in an ice bucket and a card in an envelope. I sat down on the bed and opened the card with trembling hands. It read, in Daniel's handwriting, "Mom, enjoy every moment. You've earned this. All our love, Daniel and Christine." I read the words 3 times. Then I lay back on the bed and cried. Happy tears, I thought. Grateful tears. Tears of a mother who had sacrificed everything for her children and was finally, after all these years, being given something in return. If only I had known what I was really being given. The first 3 days of the cruise were everything Daniel had promised and more. I ate food I could not pronounce, elaborate multi-course dinners with menus in French and Italian, and languages I did not recognize. I watched the sunset from the upper deck, wrapped in a blanket provided by a thoughtful crew member, feeling the salt air on my face and the gentle roll of the ship beneath my feet. I attended shows in the ship's theater, Broadway-style productions with singing and dancing and costumes that sparkled under the lights. I swam in the pool, something I had not done in years, paddling awkwardly but happily in the warm water while children splashed around me. I met other passengers, mostly couples and families, but also a few women traveling alone like me. On the second morning, I was sitting at breakfast in one of the ship's many restaurants, trying to figure out which of the 17 breakfast items on the buffet I wanted to try, when a voice behind me made me jump. "You look lost, honey." First cruise? I turned to find a woman about my age, maybe a few years older, with silver hair cut short and stylish, bright red lipstick, and eyes that sparkled with mischief. She was wearing a caftan in a riot of tropical colors and carrying a plate piled high with fruit and pastries. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. The woman laughed, a big booming laugh that turned heads across the restaurant. "Only to someone who's been on 15 of these things and knows the look. I'm Dolores. Dolores Martinez. Mind if I sit?" Before I could answer, she was sliding into the seat across from me, arranging her plate and her napkin and her coffee with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Dolores started talking immediately. So what's your story? Traveling alone? Widow? Divorced? Running away from the law? I laughed despite myself. Widow, 4 years now. My son bought me this trip as a gift. Dolores nodded knowingly. Sweet boy. I had one of those once. Well, I had 3 actually. 2 of them turned out sweet. The third one I don't talk about, long story. Where are you from? Ohio, a little town outside of Cincinnati. Dolores clapped her hands. Ohio! I love Ohio. I was married to a man from Ohio once. Gerald. Sweet man, terrible cook, died of a heart attack in 1997. I've been married 3 times, widowed 3 times. I'm starting to think I'm bad luck for husbands. But what can you do? When love comes knocking, you answer the door. I was charmed by her immediately. There was something about Dolores, something warm and genuine and utterly without pretense. She said whatever she was thinking, laughed at her own jokes, and treated everyone around her like a long-lost friend. Stick with me, she said, patting my hand across the table. I know all the secrets of these ships. Best seats for the shows, which bars have the strongest drinks, which crew members will sneak you extra dessert if you're nice to them. By the end of this cruise, you'll be a professional. That afternoon, Dolores introduced me to Patricia. Patricia was different from Dolores in almost every way. Quiet where Dolores was loud, reserved where Dolores was exuberant. She was a retired schoolteacher from Vermont, 71 years old, who had never married and had spent her pension on traveling the world. Patricia said thoughtfully over tea in one of the ship's lounges. I spent 40 years taking care of other people's children, teaching them to read, to think, to dream. When I retired, I decided it was time to take care of myself. To see all the places I had only read about in books, I asked curiously. Don't you get lonely, traveling alone? Patricia smiled. Sometimes, but loneliness is not the worst thing in the world, and I've found that when you're open to connection, it finds you. Like today. I came down here for a cup of tea, and now I've made 2 new friends. Dolores raised her mimosa in a toast. To new friends. And to cruises. And to being old ladies who still know how to have a good time. We clinked our glasses together, and I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt alive. The 3 of us became inseparable after that. We went to the shows together, sat by the pool together, shared stories about our lives over long dinners that stretched into the night. I told them about Harold, about our life together, about how much I missed him. Dolores told us about her 3 husbands, each one a character worthy of a novel, each one loved and mourned and remembered with fondness. Patricia told us about her students, the thousands of children who had passed through her classroom over 4 decades, some of whom still wrote to her. On the 4th night, we docked at our first port, a small island in the Bahamas, all white sand and turquoise water and palm trees swaying in the breeze. I spent the day walking along the beach, letting the waves lap at my feet, feeling the warm sun on my skin. I collected shells to bring home for Emma and Oliver, pretty pink ones and spiral white ones and a perfectly round sand dollar that I wrapped carefully in tissue paper. That night, back on the ship, I tried to call Daniel. It was the first time I had tried since boarding, heeding his warning about the bad reception and expensive international calls. But I missed the sound of his voice. I wanted to tell him about Dolores and Patricia, about the shows and the food and the beautiful beach. The phone rang and rang, but no one answered. I tried Christine's number. Same thing. I tried the house phone, the landline they rarely used but kept for emergencies. Voicemail. I left a message trying to sound cheerful and not worried. Hi, honey. Just wanted to let you know I'm having a wonderful time. The island today was beautiful. I made some friends, can you believe it? 2 other women traveling alone. We've been inseparable. I'm bringing back shells for the kids. Call me back when you can, okay? I love you. Tell Christine and the kids I love them too. Daniel did not call back that night, or the next day, or the day after that. I told myself not to worry. He was busy with work. The reception on the ship really was bad, just like he had said. The time difference made it hard to connect. Everything was fine. Everything was absolutely fine. I was lying to myself. Some part of me knew it even then, but I was not ready to face the truth. Not yet. On the 7th day of the cruise, halfway through my journey, the ship docked in San Juan, Puerto Rico. It was a beautiful port, colorful buildings climbing up hillsides, historic forts guarding the harbor, cobblestone streets lined with shops and restaurants. I was sitting at breakfast with Dolores and Patricia, planning our day exploring the city, when my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. I assumed it was spam, one of those automated messages about car warranties or tax refunds that somehow found their way to my phone, no matter how many times I blocked them. But something made me open it. Call it intuition. Call it fate. Call it whatever you want. Something made me look. The message read, Mrs. Dawson, this is Robert Chen, your son's business partner. I need to speak with you urgently. Please call me at this number as soon as possible. It's about Daniel. Please call immediately. My blood turned cold. My hands began to shake. The restaurant, with its cheerful chatter and clinking silverware, faded away until there was nothing but me and my phone and those words burning on the screen. Dolores noticed immediately. Margaret? What's wrong? You've gone white as a sheet. I could not answer. I could not do anything but stare at the phone in my hand. Patricia leaned forward with concern. Margaret, you're scaring us. What is it? I showed them the message. Then I stood on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else and walked out of the restaurant, finding a quiet corner of the ship where I could make the call away from the crowds and the noise. My fingers trembled as I dialed the number. Each ring felt like an hour. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, someone answered. A man's voice, professional but strained. Hello? This is Margaret Dawson, I said. You sent me a text message about my son. What's wrong? Is Daniel okay? Is he hurt? Has there been an accident? There was a long pause. Too long. The kind of pause that comes before very bad news. Robert Chen finally spoke. Mrs. Dawson, Daniel is fine. Physically, at least. He hasn't been hurt, but there's something you need to know. Something he should have told you himself, but clearly didn't. What is it? I demanded. You're scaring me. Just tell me. Robert let out a heavy breath. I heard him move, heard a door close, heard him settle into what I imagined was an office chair. Mrs. Dawson, I'm going to tell you some things that are going to be very difficult to hear. I need you to stay calm if you can. Can you do that? Just tell me, I repeated, though I was not calm at all, though my heart was racing and my vision was starting to blur at the edges. Daniel is in serious trouble, Robert said. Financial trouble. Very serious financial trouble. The investments he was managing, the accounts he was responsible for, they didn't just perform badly. He made decisions that were, well, illegal. He moved money that wasn't his to move. He falsified documents. He lied to clients, to regulators, to everyone. The world tilted. I grabbed the railing beside me to keep from falling. Robert continued relentlessly. The SEC has opened an investigation. There's going to be a lawsuit, probably multiple lawsuits. Criminal charges are almost certain. Mrs. Dawson, your son is facing the very real possibility of going to prison. I could not breathe. I could not think. This was my Daniel, my son. The boy who had been captain of his high school debate team, who had graduated summa cum laude from college, who had sent me flowers every Mother's Day without fail for 20 years. I said desperately. I don't understand. Daniel is successful. He has a beautiful house, expensive cars. He lives in one of the nicest neighborhoods in Chicago. He must be doing well." Robert's laugh was bitter. "The house is mortgaged to the hilt, Mrs. Dawson. The cars are leased. The lifestyle, all of it, is a facade. Daniel has been living on borrowed time and borrowed money for years." He's been robbing Peter to pay Paul, using new investments to cover old losses, spinning plates that were bound to come crashing down eventually. And now they have. They've all come crashing down at once. I sat down heavily on a deck chair, my legs no longer able to support me. "Why are you telling me this? Why now?" Robert's voice changed, became gentler somehow, almost apologetic. "Because of what he did to you, Mrs. Dawson. That cruise you're on? Daniel didn't buy it because he wanted to give you a nice vacation. He didn't buy it out of gratitude or love or whatever story he told you. He bought it because he needed you out of the house." "Out of the house?" I repeated stupidly. "Why would he need me out of the house?" Robert paused again. I heard him take a breath, steadying himself. "Mrs. Dawson, while you're on that cruise, Daniel is selling your house. He forged your signature on the deed, on the power of attorney documents, on everything. The sale is scheduled to close next week. When you get back from your cruise, you won't have a home to go back to." "Your house, the house you've lived in for 40 years, will belong to someone else. And the money from the sale will be gone, used to pay off a fraction of Daniel's debts." The phone slipped from my hand. It clattered on the deck, and I could hear Robert's voice, tiny and distant, asking if I was still there, if I was okay, if I had heard what he said. But I could not speak. I could not breathe. I could not do anything but sit there, frozen, as the truth of what my son had done washed over me like a wave. My house. My home. The house where I had raised my children, where I had marked their heights on the doorframe in pencil, where I had hosted countless birthday parties and holiday dinners. The house where I had nursed my husband through his final days, where I had held his hand as he drew his last breath, where his presence still lingered in every corner, in the creak of the floorboards, and the way the light fell through the kitchen window in the late afternoon. My son was selling it, stealing it. Taking everything I had and using it to try to save himself from the consequences of his own choices. And he had sent me away on this cruise, this gift, this supposed act of love, so that I would not find out until it was too late. I do not know how long I sat there. An hour, maybe more. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows across the deck. Other passengers walked by, laughing and talking, enjoying their vacations, oblivious to the woman sitting alone in the corner whose entire world had just collapsed. Dolores found me eventually. She always seemed to know where I was, to sense when I needed her. She took one look at my face, at the tears streaming down my cheeks, at my phone lying forgotten on the deck beside me, and her expression changed from concern to something harder, fiercer. Dolores sat down beside me. "Tell me everything, Margaret, from the beginning." And I did. I told her about the phone call, about Robert Chen, about Daniel's financial troubles. I told her about the forged documents, the stolen house, the sale that was closing next week while I floated on this ship in the middle of the ocean, helpless to stop it. I told her about the realization that my son, the boy I had nursed through fevers and helped with homework and cheered for at every baseball game, had betrayed me in the most fundamental way imaginable. When I finished, Dolores was quiet for a long moment. Patricia had found us by then, had listened to the end of my story with tears in her own eyes. Then Dolores said something I will never forget. She took my hands in hers, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "Margaret, you have a choice to make. Right now. Right here. You can sit here and cry and be a victim. You can let your son take everything from you and spend the rest of your life broken and bitter and defeated. Or you can fight back. You can stand up and refuse to let this happen. Which is it going to be? I stared at her through my tears. Fight back? How? I'm on a ship in the middle of the ocean. I'm thousands of miles from home. By the time I get back, the sale will be done. The house will be gone. There's nothing I can do. Dolores shook her head firmly. There's always something you can do. Always. That's the first thing you need to understand. No matter how hopeless things seem, there's always a move to make, a call to make, a fight to fight. But first, you need to pick up that phone and start making calls, starting with your daughter, Rebecca. In my shock, I had not even thought about Rebecca. But of course, Rebecca knew. She had to know. She had come to my house, had helped me pack, had told me I deserved good things. Had she known the whole time what Daniel was planning? I picked up my phone with trembling hands and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. Rebecca sounded worried. Mom, is everything okay? Daniel said you'd have bad reception on the ship. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Rebecca, I said, and my voice broke on her name. Rebecca, did you know? There was silence on the other end. A long, terrible silence that told me everything I needed to know. Rebecca started crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He told me it was the only way. He said he was going to lose everything. That Christine would leave him. That the kids would suffer. He said it was just temporary. That he would pay you back as soon as things turned around. He made it sound like it was the only option, like there was no other way. You knew? The betrayal doubled, tripled, became a physical pain in my chest. You came to my house. You helped me pack my bags. You told me I deserved good things. You looked me in the eyes and lied to me. And the whole time, you knew what he was going to do to me? Rebecca sobbed harder. I didn't know what else to do. He's my brother, Mom. I've looked up to him my whole life. When he told me what was happening, I panicked. I made the wrong choice. I know that now. I knew it then, probably, but I did it anyway. And I'll never forgive myself for that. Never. Rebecca, that house is my life, I said, and I was crying now too, tears streaming down my face unchecked. It's everything your father and I built. It's all I have left of him. How could you help take that from me? I know, Mom. I know. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I should have stopped him. I should have done something, anything other than what I did. But I didn't. And I can't take it back. I can't undo it. I can only tell you how sorry I am and hope that someday, somehow, you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I could not respond to that. I could not offer forgiveness, not then, not while my wounds were so fresh and raw. I hung up the phone and sat there, staring at nothing, feeling the last pieces of my world crumble around me. Dolores was still beside me, watching, waiting. Dolores asked gently, Your daughter knew? I nodded, unable to speak. Patricia closed her eyes. Oh, Margaret, I'm so sorry. Dolores put her arm around me. I'm sorry too. More sorry than I can say. But we don't have time for tears right now, honey. The sale closes next week, you said. That gives us 5 days, maybe 6. We need to act fast. We need to find a way to stop this. How? I asked. What can I possibly do from here? Dolores thought for a moment. Do you have a lawyer? Someone you trust? Someone back home who handles legal matters for you? I tried to think through the fog of grief and shock. We never really needed one, just for the will after Harold died. A man named David Morrison. He handled the estate, made sure everything was in order. He's been practicing law for decades. He knew Harold and me for years. Dolores nodded decisively. Call him, right now. Tell him everything. If your signature was forged on those documents, that sale isn't legal. A lawyer can stop it. A lawyer can fix this. But you have to call him now. I found David Morrison's number in my contacts. He was 70 years old, a kind man with white hair and gentle eyes who had cried at Harold's funeral, who had held my hand and told me that Harold was the finest man he had ever known. When I told him what was happening, speaking quickly and probably incoherently, trying to get the words out before I lost my courage, his voice changed. The gentle fatherly tone disappeared. In its place was something hard, something fierce, something that reminded me of a warrior putting on armor for battle. David spoke firmly. "Margaret, don't you worry about a thing. This is fraud. Plain and simple. Forgery of legal documents is a felony. Theft of property is a felony. Your son may think he's gotten away with something, but he hasn't. Not on my watch. I'm going to file for an emergency injunction first thing tomorrow morning. That sale is not going through." "Can you really stop it?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. David was resolute. "I've been practicing law for 45 years. I've handled hundreds of cases, fraud and property disputes and family matters of every kind. Trust me when I tell you, no judge in the state of Ohio is going to let a son steal his mother's house out from under her. I will make sure of it." For the first time since that phone call with Robert Chen, I felt something other than despair. A tiny spark of hope, flickering to life in the darkness. But the spark was small, and the darkness around it was vast. That night, I lay in my cabin, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the ship's engines. I tried to understand how this had happened, how my son, the boy I had loved unconditionally for 41 years, could do this to me, how he could look at me, his mother, and see nothing but an asset to be exploited, a resource to be used. Was it the money? The pressure? Had I failed him somehow, raised him to believe that family loyalty was conditional, that love could be bought and sold and traded away when things got hard? Where had I gone wrong? I thought about Christine, Daniel's wife. Did she know? Had she been part of this plan, calculating and cold? Or was she as deceived as I had been? I thought about Emma and Oliver, my grandchildren, who had nothing to do with any of this but who would inevitably suffer the consequences. What would they think when they found out what their father had done? What would they feel? Sleep did not come that night, or the next. I lay awake for hours, watching the moonlight play across the ceiling, listening to the gentle creaking of the ship, thinking and remembering, and trying to find some path forward through the wreckage of my life. The ship continued its journey over the following days, stopping at ports I had once dreamed of visiting. St. Thomas with its beautiful harbor, St. Martin with its famous beach where airplanes flew so low overhead you could almost touch them. Islands I had seen in photographs, places I had imagined visiting with Harold someday, back when someday still seemed possible. I walked through them like a ghost. My body was there, moving and breathing and going through the motions. But my mind was 3,000 miles away, in a courtroom in Ohio where David Morrison was fighting for my home. Dolores and Patricia stayed by my side. They did not ask questions or offer empty platitudes. They did not try to distract me or cheer me up or pretend that everything was fine. They just sat with me, walked with me, reminded me to eat when I forgot. Their presence was a lifeline, a tether to sanity in a sea of chaos. On the 9th day, David called with news. David sounded pleased. "The injunction was granted. The sale is blocked, Margaret. Your house is safe, for now." I burst into tears. Relief and exhaustion and gratitude all mixed together, pouring out of me in great heaving sobs. "Thank you," I managed. "Thank you so much. I don't know how to thank you." David continued more seriously. "But Margaret, there's more. We need to talk about what happens next. Daniel is furious. He's been calling my office all day, threatening to sue, claiming that you gave him power of attorney, that you agreed to this sale, that he has documentation to prove it. I need you to tell me, clearly and unequivocally, Did you ever sign a power of attorney giving Daniel control over your property? Never, I said firmly. I would never do that. Harold always said, never give anyone control over your home. It's the only thing you truly own, the only thing no one can take from you. I remember his exact words. David was confident. That's what I thought. Which means Daniel didn't just forge the deed. He forged the power of attorney documents too. This isn't just civil fraud anymore, Margaret. This is criminal. The district attorney is going to want to talk to you when you get back. Criminal charges. Against my own son. The words felt unreal, like something from a television drama, not my actual life. David asked gently, "Are you prepared for that, Margaret? Pressing charges against your own child?" I thought about it. I thought about Daniel as a baby, sleeping in my arms, so small and perfect and full of promise. Daniel as a toddler, taking his first wobbly steps across the living room floor, laughing with delight at his own accomplishment. Daniel at his wedding, looking at Christine with so much love in his eyes that I cried through the entire ceremony. Daniel at Harold's funeral, standing beside the casket with his shoulders shaking, unable to speak. And then I thought about Daniel on the phone 3 weeks ago, the rehearsed enthusiasm, the 2 quick answers, the urgency I had not understood at the time. "Thank you," he had said, "for everything you did for us." And the whole time, he was planning this. The whole time, he was preparing to take everything I had. I said quietly, "I didn't start this, David. Daniel did. Whatever happens now is his responsibility, not mine. I will not protect him from the consequences of what he's done." David responded with approval. "Good. I'll handle everything from here. You just focus on getting home safely. We have a lot of work ahead of us." After the call ended, I went up to the top deck of the ship. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple that seemed impossible, too beautiful to be real. I stood at the railing and looked out at the endless ocean, at the horizon where water met sky, at the first stars beginning to emerge in the darkening blue above. Dolores appeared beside me, as she always seemed to do when I needed her most. Dolores asked softly, "Good news or bad news?" "Both," I said. "The house is safe. The sale is blocked. But my son might go to prison." Dolores nodded slowly, looking out at the sunset. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I should feel angry. And I am angry, I think, somewhere deep down. But mostly I just feel sad. Sad that it came to this. Sad that he could do this to me, to us, to our family. Sad that the boy I raised, the man I thought I knew, turned out to be someone capable of such betrayal." Dolores was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can I tell you something, Margaret? Something I don't tell many people?" I nodded. Dolores stared out at the horizon. "I told you I had 3 sons. I told you one of them I don't talk about. His name was Thomas. He was my youngest. The light of my life. Smart, funny, charming. Everyone who met him loved him. He could talk his way out of anything, into anything. I thought he was destined for greatness." She paused, took a breath. Dolores continued, "When Thomas was 32 years old, he stole $50,000 from his employer, a construction company where he worked as a bookkeeper. He'd been embezzling for years, apparently, moving money around, covering his tracks. When he finally got caught, do you know what he did? He blamed it on a coworker, an innocent woman named Gloria who had worked at that company for 15 years. She nearly went to prison because of his lies. She lost her job, her reputation, everything." I looked at Dolores, seeing her in a new light. "What happened?" I asked. Dolores sighed. "The truth came out eventually. One of the other employees found proof, documents Thomas had hidden. Thomas went to prison for 2 years, and I had to make a choice. I could stand by him because he was my son, because I loved him, because that's what mothers are supposed to do. Or I could hold him accountable." I could tell him that what he did was wrong, unforgivable, and that I couldn't protect him from the consequences. Which did you choose? Dolores turned to look at me. I chose accountability. I told Thomas I loved him. I told him I would always love him, that nothing could change that. But I also told him that I couldn't visit him in prison. I couldn't write to him. I couldn't pretend that what he'd done was acceptable. He needed to face what he'd done, truly face it, without me there to make it easier. I asked quietly, "Do you regret it?" Dolores shook her head firmly. Not for a moment. It was the hardest thing I ever did. But loving someone doesn't mean enabling them. It doesn't mean protecting them from the results of their own choices. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let them face the consequences. It's the only way they can ever truly grow, ever truly change. What happened to Thomas? I asked. Dolores smiled sadly. He served his time. He got out. He spent a few years struggling, angry at me, angry at the world. But eventually, something shifted. He started going to therapy. He got a job, a real job, honest work. He married a nice woman, had 2 kids. And about 5 years ago, he called me. He said he finally understood. He said going through it alone, without me there to soften the blow, was the only thing that made him really look at himself, really see what he'd become. He thanked me for holding him accountable. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks again. Are you and Thomas close now? Dolores nodded. We are. It took years. It took work. But we rebuilt something. Something different from what we had before, but something real. Something based on honesty instead of pretense. I thought about her words long after she left. The sun disappeared below the horizon. The stars came out, more stars than I had ever seen in my life, scattered across the black velvet sky like diamonds beyond counting. Somewhere out there, Daniel was learning that his plan had failed, that his mother was not the easy mark he had assumed. Somewhere out there, Rebecca was carrying the guilt of her complicity. And somewhere out there, my house was still standing, still mine, still holding the memories of a lifetime within its walls. I did not know what the future held. I did not know if I would ever forgive Daniel, if I would ever be able to look at him the same way again. I did not know if my relationship with Rebecca could be repaired. I did not know anything really, except that I was still here. Still standing, still fighting, and somehow, despite everything, that felt like enough. The remaining days of the cruise passed in a blur of emotions. I stopped hiding in my cabin. I started joining Dolores and Patricia again, not necessarily for conversation, but for companionship. There is something healing about being in the presence of people who know your pain and do not try to fix it, who simply sit with you in the darkness until you are ready to find your way back to the light. On the 12th night, the ship docked in Miami. The cruise was over. The return to reality had begun. I said goodbye to Dolores and Patricia at the port. There were tears, there were hugs, there were promises to stay in touch that I hoped desperately we would keep. Dolores held my face in her hands, looked deep into my eyes. Dolores said firmly, "You're stronger than you know, Margaret. Whatever happens next, remember that. You have survived this. You will survive whatever comes after." Patricia pressed a piece of paper into my hand. "My address and phone number. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call me, day or night." And then they were gone, disappearing into the crowd of disembarking passengers, back to their own lives and their own stories. I took a taxi to the airport. The flight home was long and quiet. I sat by the window again, watching the clouds pass beneath us, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that was still to come. When I landed in Ohio, David Morrison was waiting for me at the arrivals gate. He looked exactly as I remembered him. White hair, kind eyes, the same navy blue suit he had worn to Harold's funeral. David hugged me. "Welcome home, Margaret." I asked him what I had been afraid to ask. Is it really still my home? David smiled. It really is. The sale is void. The documents have been invalidated. Your house belongs to you and no one else. Come on, I'll drive you there myself. The drive through familiar streets was surreal. Everything looked the same as it had 3 weeks ago, when Daniel had driven me to the airport. The corner store, the park, the church. But I was different. I had been changed by what I had learned, by what I had endured, by the strength I had discovered within myself. When we pulled up to my house, I started crying again. But these tears were different. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of homecoming. My house was still there, still standing. The white siding, the black shutters, the red door that Harold had painted all those years ago because he remembered a silly thing I had said on our third date, home. But the battle was not over. Not yet. 2 days later, I received a letter from the district attorney's office. Daniel was being formally charged with forgery, fraud, and attempted theft. The letter explained the charges in cold legal language, but the meaning was clear. If convicted, my son faced up to 10 years in prison. A week after that, Christine called me. I almost did not answer. But something made me pick up the phone, some need to understand, to hear her side of the story. Christine sounded exhausted and afraid. Margaret? It's Christine. I know I'm probably the last person you want to talk to right now. I was guarded. You're right about that, but I'll listen. Christine broke down. I didn't know, Margaret. I swear to you, I swear on my children's lives, I didn't know. Daniel told me the cruise was a gift, a thank you for everything you'd done. He told me you'd agreed to help us out financially, that you were going to sell the house and give us the money anyway, and that this was just a formality while you were away. He said you wanted to downsize, to move into something smaller. I believed him. I believed every word. I'm such a fool, but I believed him. And now? I asked. Christine sobbed harder. Now I don't know what to believe. I don't know who my husband is. The man I married, the man I've shared my life with for 15 years, wouldn't do this. He couldn't do this. But clearly that man doesn't exist. Maybe he never did. Maybe I've been living with a stranger all along. I did not know what to say. Part of me wanted to comfort her, this woman who had been deceived as thoroughly as I had been. She was a victim, too, in her own way. But another part of me, the part that was still raw and bleeding, could not bring myself to offer the absolution she was seeking. I finally said, Take care of the children, Christine. Whatever happens to Daniel, whatever happens to your marriage, Emma and Oliver need their mother. They need stability. They need someone they can count on. Don't let what Daniel did destroy them too. Christine promised through her tears. I won't. I swear to you, I won't. They're all that matters now. Rebecca called the next day. I let it go to voicemail 6 times before finally answering on the 7th. Rebecca was already crying when I picked up. Mom, please let me explain. Please give me a chance to tell you my side, I said flatly. What is there to explain, Rebecca? You knew what Daniel was planning. You came to my house and helped him do it. You packed my bags. You picked out my clothes. You told me I deserved good things while you were helping your brother steal everything I had. Rebecca cried harder. I didn't help, Mom. Not really. I just didn't stop him. I know that's the same thing. I know I'm just as guilty. I know there's no excuse for what I did. But Mom, he's my brother. I've looked up to him my whole life. When he told me what was happening, when he told me he was going to lose everything, his house, his family, his freedom, I panicked. I made the wrong choice. I'll never forgive myself for that. Never. I sighed heavily. Do you remember what I told you when you were 16? When you lied to me about going to that party, the one where the police showed up? Rebecca sniffled. You said trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can glue it back together, but you'll always see the cracks, I said. That's right. I love you, Rebecca. You're my daughter. You will always be my daughter. Nothing will ever change that. but I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again. Not the way I did before. That's not a punishment. It's not revenge. It's just the truth. It's where we are now," Rebecca asked desperately. "What can I do, Mom? How can I make this right? Tell me and I'll do it. Anything." I thought for a long moment. "I don't know if you can make it right, Rebecca. Maybe some things can't be made right. Maybe some damage can't be undone, but you can try. You can show me, through your actions, not your words, that you've learned from this, that you understand what you did and why it was wrong. That's all any of us can do when we've hurt someone we love. Try to be better. Try to earn back what we've lost." And hope that one day, if we're very lucky, the cracks start to fade. The weeks that followed were a strange mixture of grief and renewal. I grieved for the family I thought I had. I grieved for the son I thought I knew. I grieved for the relationship with my daughter that would never be quite the same, that would always carry the shadow of betrayal. But I also began, slowly, painfully, to rebuild. Not my family. That was beyond my power to repair. But my life, my sense of self, my belief that the world, despite its cruelty, still held beauty and hope and possibility. Dolores called me every Sunday just like clockwork. She would talk for hours about everything and nothing, making me laugh despite myself, reminding me that life goes on even after disaster, that joy can be found even in the darkest corners. Patricia sent me letters, real letters, handwritten on beautiful cream-colored stationery, filled with stories about her travels and her garden and the books she was reading. They arrived every Friday without fail, and I found myself looking forward to them with almost childlike anticipation, rushing to the mailbox to see if the familiar handwriting was there. And then there was Daniel. The trial was set for September. David Morrison helped me prepare my testimony, walking me through what would happen, what questions I would be asked, how the prosecutor would try to establish the facts, and how Daniel's lawyer would try to spin them. It was brutal, reliving the betrayal again and again, putting into precise legal language the depth of the hurt. But before the trial, Daniel asked to see me. He was out on bail, staying in a small apartment on the other side of town. Christine had taken the children and moved back in with her parents. The beautiful house in the suburbs was for sale, this time legitimately. I almost said no to his request. Every instinct told me to refuse, to protect myself from further pain. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of the boy he had been. Maybe it was the need for closure, for understanding. Maybe it was just morbid curiosity, a desire to look into the eyes of the person who had hurt me and try to understand how he could have done it. The apartment was small and sparse. Cheap furniture, bare walls, the smell of desperation and regret. Daniel answered the door looking like a ghost of the man I remembered. He had lost at least 20 pounds. His hair was longer, unkempt, streaked with gray I had never noticed before. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, sunken in a face that seemed to have aged a decade in a matter of weeks. Daniel could barely meet my eyes. "Mom, thanks for coming." I stood in the doorway. I'm not sure why I did. Daniel stepped back. "Do you want to come in? I can make coffee. Or tea." "I think I have tea." I did not move. "I'll stand here. Say what you need to say." Daniel nodded slowly, accepting this. He leaned against the door frame as if he lacked the strength to stand on his own. Daniel began. "I'm sorry. I know those words are inadequate. I know they can't undo what I did, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I never planned for things to go this far. I was desperate. I was drowning. I made choices I can never take back." I asked him directly. "Why didn't you just ask me for help? I'm your mother. I would have done anything for you. I would have sold the house willingly if you had told me you needed the money. All you had to do was ask." Daniel shook his head, tears beginning to fall. How could I ask? You always thought I was successful. You and Dad, you were so proud of me. The golden child. The one who made it. I couldn't bear to tell you the truth. That I was a failure. That I had lost everything. That the life you thought I had was a lie. I couldn't stand the thought of you looking at me differently. I was incredulous. So you thought stealing my house would be better? You thought sending me away on a cruise so you could take everything I had would somehow hurt less than admitting you needed help. Daniel was shaking now. I wasn't thinking clearly, Mom. I wasn't thinking at all. I was panicking. Every decision I made just dug me deeper into the hole. The more I tried to fix things, the worse they got. And by the time I realized what I was doing, really realized it, the wheels were already in motion. I couldn't stop. I stood silently for a long moment. I used to tell you, when you were little, that there was nothing you could ever do that would make me stop loving you. Do you remember that? Daniel nodded through his tears. I continued with difficulty. I'm trying to hold on to that, Daniel. I'm trying to remember the boy you were, the man I thought you would become. But I look at you now, and I don't know who you are. I don't know how the son I raised, the son I sacrificed for, the son I would have given my life for, could do what you did. And I don't know if I'll ever understand, Daniel pleaded. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, whatever it takes, whatever you need. I'll do anything. I shook my head. I don't need anything from you, Daniel. I needed a son I could trust. I needed a son who would be there for me in my old age, who would help me when I needed help, who would honor the sacrifices your father and I made to give you the life you had. I needed a son who saw me as a person, not a resource to be exploited. But that's not who you are, and no amount of apologies can change that. Daniel was broken. So that's it? You're just going to cut me out of your life forever? I answered honestly. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. I don't know if I want to. All I know is that right now, standing here, looking at you, all I feel is sadness. Not anger, not hatred. Just a profound, bone-deep sadness that this is where we've ended up. This is what our family has become. I left without another word. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove home. And for the first time in weeks, I did not cry. I had cried enough. Now it was time to figure out how to live with what remained. The trial lasted 3 days. I took the witness stand on the second day, sat in that hard wooden chair facing the judge and the jury and my own son at the defendant's table, and answered every question as clearly and honestly as I could. I told my story. I presented the evidence. I described the phone call from Robert Chen, the discovery of the forged documents, the moment when my world fell apart. Daniel's lawyer tried to suggest that I had given permission, that I had known about the sale, that my shock was an act, that I was trying to punish my son for crimes he had not committed. I remained calm. I told the truth. And when I looked at Daniel sitting there in his too large suit, I felt nothing. Not love, not hate. Just the vast, empty space where a relationship used to be. Daniel was convicted on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 2. I did not stay to watch him be led away in handcuffs. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright September sunshine, and I felt, for the first time in months, like I could breathe again. Life after that was quiet. The kind of quiet I had once feared when Harold died, alone in my big empty house with nothing but memories and regrets for company. But somewhere along the way, the quiet stopped feeling like loneliness and started feeling like peace. I kept in touch with Dolores and Patricia. We became the friends I had not known I needed, the family I had not known I was missing. We talked on the phone for hours. We sent each other cards and letters and little gifts for no reason. And the following spring, almost exactly a year after my first cruise, we took another one together. Alaska this time, cold and wild and beautiful. We watched whales breach in the gray water, their massive bodies rising from the depths in displays of power and grace that took my breath away. We laughed until our sides hurt at dinner every night, trading stories and jokes and memories. Rebecca came to visit that summer. It was awkward at first, both of us tiptoeing around the elephant in the room, speaking in careful sentences designed to avoid the wounds that were still healing. But slowly, gradually, we started to rebuild. She came every month at first, then every 2 weeks. She helped me in the garden, planting the tomatoes and zucchini that Harold and I had grown every year of our marriage. She sat with me on the porch as the sun went down, talking about her work and her life and her hopes for the future. She did not try to apologize anymore. She had said everything there was to say. Instead, she tried to show me through her actions what words could never fully convey. She tried to be present, to be reliable, to be the daughter I had always believed her to be. I started volunteering at the church again, not because I felt I had to, but because I wanted to. There was comfort in community, in being part of something larger than myself, in feeling useful and connected and alive. I even started writing. Not for publication, not for anyone else to read, just for myself. Stories about my life, about my marriage, about the children I had raised and the woman I had become. Stories about Harold, about our courtship and our wedding, and the 40 years we had shared. Stories about the cruise that had almost destroyed me, and the unexpected strength I had found in the wreckage. One evening, about a year after the trial, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset when an unfamiliar car pulled into my driveway. A young woman got out, someone I did not recognize at first. She was tall and slender, with brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that seemed familiar somehow. Then she got closer, and I realized. It was Emma, my granddaughter. "13 years old now, taller than I remembered, gangly in the way of teenagers still growing into their bodies. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. Emma spoke hesitantly. "Grandma, can I come up?" I stood slowly, my old knees protesting. "Of course, sweetheart. Of course you can." She climbed the porch steps and stood before me, looking uncertain and scared, like a child approaching a dog she was not sure would bite. Emma said nervously, "Mom doesn't know I'm here. I mean, she knows I wanted to come, but she doesn't know I actually did it. I took an Uber. I saved up my babysitting money. I had to see you," I asked gently. "Does your mother know you're talking to me at all?" Emma nodded quickly. "She says it's okay. She says you and Dad have things to work out, grown-up things, but that you're still my grandmother. She says she can't keep us apart. She wouldn't want to." I smiled at that, a genuine smile. Christine, for all that had happened, was trying to do right by her children. I patted the chair next to mine. "Sit down. Tell me how you've been. Tell me everything." Emma sat. She told me about school, about her friends, about the drama club she had joined, and the boy in her math class who she maybe sort of liked, but she was not sure yet. She told me about Oliver, who was struggling with what had happened, who did not understand why his father had gone away. She told me about the new apartment they lived in now, smaller than the house, but cozy, she said, closer to her grandparents on her mother's side. Then she got quiet. She looked at me with her father's eyes and asked the question she had clearly come to ask. Emma asked with difficulty, "Grandma, do you hate Dad for what he did?" I considered the question carefully. I owed her honesty, this child who had done nothing wrong, who was caught in the crossfire of adult failures. I said thoughtfully, "I used to think I did. When I first found out, when I was on that ship in the middle of the ocean and I learned what he was doing, I was so angry, so hurt. I thought I would never stop being angry. But hate takes a lot of energy, Emma. It takes a lot out of you. And at my age, I don't have energy to waste on hate. So no, I don't hate your father. I'm disappointed in him. I'm sad about what he did and the choices that led him there. But hate? No. He's my son. I'll always love him. I just can't trust him. And those are two different things." Emma nodded slowly, processing this. "I think I understand." We sat together as the sun went down, painting the sky in the same colors I had watched from the deck of the Celestial Voyager a lifetime ago. I told her stories about her grandfather, about her father as a little boy, about this house and its history. She listened with wide eyes, hungry for connection, for a piece of her family that had not been tainted by scandal and betrayal. When the Uber came to take her home, she hugged me tight, tight enough to hurt, tight enough to mean something. Emma whispered, "I love you, Grandma." I held her close. "I love you too, sweetheart. Always. No matter what happens. No matter what anyone does. That will never change." After she left, I sat on the porch for a long time, watching the stars come out one by one, and I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the trial, the slow, difficult, ongoing work of rebuilding a life from the ruins of what I had thought it was. And I realized something. This was not the story of how my son destroyed my life. This was the story of how I discovered that my life was bigger than any one person's betrayal, bigger than my son's crimes, bigger than my daughter's mistakes, bigger than the house I had almost lost. My life was the love I had shared with Harold for 40 years. It was the friendships I had made with Dolores and Patricia, connections forged in crisis and strengthened by time. It was the relationship I was slowly rebuilding with Rebecca, different than before, but still real. It was the bond I was forging with Emma, and hopefully with Oliver too when he was ready. It was the community that had welcomed me back. It was the words I was putting on paper every day, trying to make sense of a senseless thing. My son sent me on a cruise to relax. Turns out it was supposed to be a one-way ticket out of my own life, but I made a phone call, and that phone call changed everything. Not because it saved my house, though it did, but because it forced me to confront truths I had been avoiding for years. About my family, about myself, about what really matters when everything else falls away. I am 65 years old now. I live in the same house I have lived in for over 40 years. The red door needs repainting, the color faded by sun and rain and time. But I kind of like the way it looks now, weathered and worn. It tells a story. It has survived. Daniel was released from prison 6 months ago. He served 2 years of his 4-year sentence, got out early for good behavior. He is in counseling now, working with a therapist to understand why he made the choices he made. He called me last week. I did not answer. I am not ready. Maybe I never will be, but I am not angry anymore. I am just tired. Tired of carrying the weight of his mistakes. Ready to set it down and walk away. Rebecca comes to visit every other Sunday. We bake cookies together, the same recipes I used when she was a little girl, chocolate chip and oatmeal raisin, and the sugar cookies we always made at Christmas. We do not talk about what happened. We do not need to anymore. We just enjoy being together. The cracks in our trust are still visible if you look closely, but they are not as sharp as they used to be. Time has smoothed them. Not erased them, but softened their edges. Christine and the kids have settled into their new life. The divorce was finalized last year. Emma calls me every week without fail. Long conversations about school and boys, and the future she is beginning to imagine for herself. Oliver is shyer, more reserved, still processing what happened in his own way. But he sends me drawings sometimes, delivered through Emma or through the mail. Pictures of our house, of the porch where we sit together, of the garden where his grandfather and I used to plant tomatoes every spring. And me? I am okay. Better than okay most days. I have learned that strength is not about never falling down. It is about getting back up. It is about facing the worst that life can throw at you and finding a way forward anyway. It is about making that phone call when everything seems hopeless. About reaching out for help when you need it. About believing that even in the darkest moments, there is still a path to the light. My name is Margaret Ellen Dawson. I was betrayed by my own son. I almost lost everything, but I am still here. Still standing on my front porch, watching the sunset, remembering and hoping and living. That is my story. It is not the story I expected to tell. It is not the story I would have chosen if anyone had given me a choice, but it is mine. Every painful, beautiful, heartbreaking, hopeful piece of it is mine. And I would not trade it for anything, because it made me who I am today. A survivor. A grandmother. A friend. A woman who finally, after 65 years, knows her own worth. And if there is one thing I want you to take from all of this, it is this. You are stronger than you know. Whatever you are facing right now, whatever betrayals you have suffered, whatever losses you have endured, you have the power within you to rebuild, to reimagine your life, to find joy in unexpected places and strength in the most unlikely moments. You just have to be willing to make the call.